Yeah, my name's Jonny. I'm an anaesthetist working in North East London. And 3 years ago, we set up GASP, which stands for the Greener Anaesthesia and Sustainability Project. It's basically a multidisciplinary group made up of people from all over the healthcare industry and outside of healthcare, based sort of throughout all areas of the UK. And we're looking to try and reduce the environmental impact of healthcare. And we do that out of 4 main areas within our organisation. So we have an area that deals with education and trying to sort of spread tips and tricks about how to be more sustainable as healthcare workers. Then we've got another area that works within quality improvement, so looking at projects and how we can continue those projects sort of throughout the UK. We've got an area that looks at advocacy, so that's sort of supporting groups such as Extinction Rebellion and more localised groups, and looking at how we can sort of pressure government and industry to become more sort of green and sustainable. And then we have a consulting sort of branch as well, which basically works with trusts and with other industries, looking at ways in which we can try and steer them towards being more sustainable. And within our work within NHS hospital trusts, for example, we try and pressure them to declare climate emergencies and net zero declarations. When we started out 3 years ago, we basically started out as 2 doctors that didn't know each other working in the same hospital trust, which was Barts Health, which is a trust in London. We both had a similar idea for a project. So we got in touch with Barts Health and started working with them on this project. And then we decided that, if we're going to be moving around, as you often do in training, we needed a mechanism of continuing that. So setting up GASP worked really well for that. And then over the last 3 years, the sort of groups that we've worked with, within our quality improvement work, we've worked with many, many different hospital trusts throughout the UK, all the way from the South Coast down in Brighton, all the way up in Scotland. And yeah, we sort of continue to support all of our network within GASP with all their projects. We have currently about 45 members which are doing GASP projects throughout the UK. And most people start their sustainability journey with waste, because you see all this waste, and within the operating theatre, we're constantly unwrapping things and throwing them in bins that are going to end up in an incinerator. And it's a really visual thing that we all take on board. And that's how most of us have started out in this journey. And then moving forward, so you start learning more about what you can do to be more sustainable. So we started to realise, for example, it's not really about the waste, it's about the carbon that's gone into the manufacture of that product that you're then throwing away. And the waste is just a really small aspect of the carbon footprint or the environmental footprint of that piece of equipment. And then NHS declared a net zero declaration a few years ago, and that really helped focus some of our energies within GASP as well, because what you can see they've provided us with is a way that the carbon footprint of the NHS is divided up throughout healthcare. And you can see that a huge proportion of it is to do with procurement and the stuff that we buy and the stuff that we use. So I started asking myself, within anaesthesia and within healthcare, what are items that we are currently using a lot of? And within anaesthesia, one bit of kit that we use every day is a laryngoscope, which is something we use to insert endotracheal tubes. And there became a switch a few years ago where we were throwing all of those laryngoscopes away because they're single use, we're concerned about infection control. So we started questioning those. We started looking at what is the carbon impact of that. And then you go and look into the data and you find there's amazing people out there like Professor Sherman from Yale, who has already done a life cycle analysis looking at the laryngoscope and the difference between a reusable and a single use one and the carbon and environmental impact between the two. So then we take that data back to hospital trusts and we start asking them questions. Why are we doing this? And we try and make some changes. And then anaesthetic gases, that's a real big issue for us. Anaesthetic gases are really, really potent greenhouse gases. Some of the anaesthetic gases that we use are 2,540 times more warming than carbon dioxide. And they stay in the atmosphere for a long, long time. So then we think, well, what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint from anaesthesia? And suddenly all these things start, the more you dig and the more you sort of scratch on the surface, the more you sort of see from what started out as a problem with waste is now sort of snowballed into so many other opportunities based around transport, energy, and that's all due to the fact that more people are talking about it, more people are sort of asking those questions. If you're looking at it from a sort of a personal project implementation perspective, so what's difficult about getting a project off the ground, I think there are levels of bureaucracy within our health system which can make things quite difficult. Case in point, our first project within GASP was a medical PVC recycling scheme. It's been set up by the plastics industry, and they set up a company called RecoMed, and they basically offered to take away all of our anaesthetic masks, oxygen masks, and oxygen tubing away for free. So they provide the bin, they will take away all the plastic. We did that for every single anaesthetic across the UK. You'd save close to about 2,500 tons or something of medical PVC. And diverting that from a clinical waste stream, which has a cost associated with it, into a free waste stream, you save £1 million a year, which on the grand scheme of things is quite small. But anyway, it's a freebie for the trust. It looks like it's a really good thing to get off the ground. It took us about 6 months to get 2 bins put into a place because there was a lot of red tape to go through. From an infection control perspective, from a safety angle. So there's lots of, it can be quite tricky from a bureaucratic perspective to get things off the ground. But the one thing I say to everyone within our group is just keep on persisting and just keep on going, because as soon as more people start getting on side, then you can break through that. So I think that's probably one of the trickiest things. I mean, it can be quite slow sometimes getting things off the ground. From a national perspective, the hardest nut to crack from a sustainability standpoint is unfortunately the most important one. If you look at the way that the carbon footprint of the NHS is divided up, if you look at the pie chart, a huge swathe of it, a huge proportion of it is down to what we buy and all of the stuff that we procure from the NHS. And that's included within what's called the NHS Carbon Footprint Plus, is stuff that the health service influences, things like what we buy. That's really difficult to try and get on top of, because basically relying on industry changing their act, basically, and trying to be more sustainable in the way that they make their items, so the way they package their items, the way that they, what they make their items out of, where they're shipping their items from, how they're shipping their items. We are their main procurer of goods. Therefore, if we say, we need to see what your carbon footprint is, what your, if we value sustainability more, potentially they're going to take it more seriously. So I think, those are the two things that I'd sort of say. From a personal perspective, it's the bureaucracy, and from a wider scheme of things, really how we're going to work with industry is going to be our big challenge, I think, in the next 20 years or so. I think the most impactful projects that we've done within GASP is all related to our anaesthetic gas use, and that's due to the fact that anaesthetic gases are so impactful. Yeah. So, you can be vegan, you can not fly, recycle every day, you can live a really, really solid life at home from a sustainability standpoint, and then you can go to work, and if you choose a specific anaesthetic gas, for example, like desflurane, and use that as your regular anaesthetic gas, then everything you're doing is effectively, it's such a small part of your carbon footprint, all of those amazing things you're doing at home, because the anaesthetic gas you choose has such a significant carbon footprint associated with it. So within GASP, one of our main projects that we roll out across hospital sites, and what we encourage our committee members to engage with, is anaesthetic gas projects. So looking at using anaesthetic gases with a lower carbon footprint, such as sevoflurane, and using sevoflurane at a very low flow rate, and also encouraging lower carbon forms of anaesthesia, things like total intravenous anaesthesia, which is where that white stuff that we inject, propofol, is where we just basically give that in the form of an infusion over the course of the anaesthetic, and we use special pumps in which to do that. And that has a carbon footprint 4 orders of magnitude lower than that of anaesthetic gases. So there are many barriers when it comes to many different other green alternatives. So if we're looking at total intravenous anaesthesia, some of the barriers are equipment availability. So you need a specific pump. If you've got a busy operating list and you've got patients coming through, and the pump isn't even available, and you're having to send off your team to try and find the appropriate pumps, then people are just going to turn on the gas because it's just there in front of you. So equipment availability is definitely a barrier, but I also think familiarity of the anaesthetic technique. I mean, you can hardly say it's not a new anaesthetic technique anymore. It's been around a long time, but it's still not our default. And when you've got people that have been learned anaesthesia using anaesthetic gases, teaching people how to deliver anaesthetics, like me 7 years ago, first time I've ever given an anaesthetic. You know, they're going to be, the first port of call is you're always taught how to give a safe gas anaesthetic, and rightly so. But I think as time moves on, we need to start really pushing much more the intravenous method, because there are other benefits as well associated with it. The white medicine propofol is also an anti-sickness medicine. So if you give someone an anaesthetic with just the propofol compared to with the gas, you've got they're much less likely to feel sick after their anaesthetic. So I think familiarity and equipment availability are the real barriers for things like total intravenous anaesthesia. I mean, COVID's been a real mixed bag. I mean, sustainability standpoint alone, there's been positives and there's been negatives. Obviously, there's been a huge burden from a clinical waste perspective, and a huge burden from a carbon perspective in the procurement of PPE and all the personal protective equipment. There's been a fantastic review paper done by Chantal Risen, who's an ENT surgeon down in Brighton. She's done some really good stuff within the sustainability field, and she's looked at the carbon footprint of some of the PPE that we use, and things like the disposable gowns have a really high carbon footprint associated with their manufacture and transport. So, you know, the PPE has been really burdensome, and it's also been really burdensome from a clinical waste perspective, because a lot of our stuff that we'd normally put into, say, a domestic waste stream or an offensive waste stream now, because of COVID, has had to go to an infectious clinical waste stream, and that has a much higher fiscal cost associated with it and carbon cost associated with it as well. So the PPE has been really negative, but on the positive side, keeping people out of hospital has had some benefits. When I say keeping people out of hospital, I don't mean discouraging people to come to hospital because if they're sick. I mean using things like what we're doing now, so telemedicine, so speaking to your GP over the phone instead of having to go in, speaking to them via Zoom or whatever platform they use. That has a significant reduction in carbon footprint because you're reducing patient travel. And there's been various different studies that have shown anything from a 40 to 70% reduction in carbon footprint associated with that consultation related to the travel. It's great for a patient because from a social perspective, you're not disrupting their day as much. From an economic perspective, you're saving money from them and probably for the health system as well. And then from an environmental perspective, obviously you're cutting out the travel. So I think it's important that we adopt some of these positive things moving forward. And we're at a point now within the healthcare system where we've got waiting lists which are sky high. We really need to rethink the way that we work as a healthcare system, and this is a really good time to bring in sustainability as our focus there as well. So from a financial perspective, from a patient social perspective, but especially from an environmental perspective as well. You know what's going on, you know what the problems are, and you're good at seeing where the inefficiencies lie within healthcare systems. The thing that you're lacking, and this is purely due to the way that the hierarchical structure of medicine is developed, is empowerment to get on and actually get stuck into these projects. And that's something that we as a healthcare system really need to work on. You're really up to date with your knowledge. You tend to be really passionate and concerned about environmental issues. You have different time constraints to a lot of the clinical people, but you're also a fresh set of eyes within a clinical setting as well. So where we think we've been doing something well for all this time, you can come in and go, oh, have you thought about doing it this way? And you're like, oh, yeah. Okay. So the advice that I'd give to students that really want to move into anything to do with sustainable healthcare is just do it. Find someone within your hospital that is passionate, and that person will need you and want you on their side. Link up with us, link up with GASP. When I say become a GASP member, there's no membership or anything like that. We're not that posh, no money flows through us, but just join our GASP family and you'll be linked up to a lot of people with similar ideas all throughout the UK. You know, it's not just for doctors, it's not, you know, we have students, we have nurses, we have physios, psychologists, we have everyone within our organisation. And then, yeah, just when you're within the hospital, obviously you're trying to learn how to be doctors, and that takes priority. But you know, question all the time, how could this be done better? And then moving forward, when you're thinking about your CV and the back page of your CV and getting jobs as you come out the other end of medical school, these projects are really, really fun to do. They're really interesting. And they're also really quite vogue at the moment. So you're going to stand out from your colleagues if you come to them and be like, I've got this poster, this publication based around sustainability because I'm concerned about the future of the healthcare system. What that shows to the people employing you or to your or whatever you're being interviewed by, it shows that you've got a good understanding of healthcare systems, you're interested in management, you're interested in education, and you're also interested in improvement. It just ticks a lot of boxes. So I'd say really, really, if you're going to do any sort of projects and things like that, I'd always encourage you to do a sustainable healthcare related one. Go into it alone. I mean, I would never, ever, ever embark on a sustainable project on my own because you're not going to get anywhere. You need support of people, and you need those people to be from various different walks of life as well, so that you can get a really well-rounded project that's going to be successful. Yeah, so if you go on our website, gaspanaesthesia.com, have a look around. There's a little join button, or you can just email us at gaspanaesthesia@gmail.com. And yeah, you'd all be really welcome. It'd be great to have you guys on board. It's been a really fun couple of years. anyone that's been sort of sharing our same sort of mission, which is to reduce the environmental impact of healthcare, we've just tried to get alongside and support. I think that's what's also really important within this whole movement as well. It's all about, there's lots and lots of enthusiasm out there, and it's trying to sort of piece all those things together and see how, not how you can replicate other people's work, but how you can work alongside them and really hold people up and support them in what they're doing. So much cool stuff out there at the moment. I think it's really easy within sustainability and the environment to get really bogged down with the sort of nebulous nature of climate change and how we're all doomed and be like that. I think the way to sort of shift it is the fact that there is so much low-hanging fruit for grabbing at the moment. There's so many ways that we can improve, and there's so much ambition now within the healthcare system that it's just a really exciting time to be doing these projects. We're really on the cusp of some really cool stuff. So just get involved.